Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode, and this episode, I believed in Asia Pacific, it becomes so popular that our think tank and different research organization, academy, and politician they are seriously thinking about AI running mate. And dear audience, you know that we have our one of the largest public-private partnership dialogue in Dubai Expo, and all of the speakers, uh, Professor David Callis and Tom Rose, they will join in this Dubai Expo. And beside that, we are growing and connecting so fast. We are working with BBC, International Chamber of Commerce. We are working with Reuters. We are starting collaborating with different developing nations and corporations, and we are contributing through our strategy. And yes, open dialogue is one of the major strategy how we collaborating around the world. So I want to start from Mr. Tom Rose, because your these visions already become so popular in Asia Pacific, especially I want to say the youth communities, young politicians, academia. They're seriously thinking about you. And remember, you have a big show in Dubai Expo. All of the ministers and the corporation, largest corporations, universities, and it's one of the biggest event around the world. And Malaysian climate change divisions, they are actually promoting our event. And both of you will join in this event. So we are taking preparation. Tomorrow we have a big collaborative meeting and everything. So Mr. Tom Rose, how you want to share your views and especially your visions about politics?
Yeah, well, this series is talking about my exploratory campaign for, running for the primary using the USTP's primary process. And it's exploratory because we're not sure if this is going to work. We're not sure if the USTP is the right structure to do what I want to do. If this is the best use of my skills and talents or my team's skills and talents to use this structure. And so we're still working that out. But and so we've talked about my different platform planks that I'll have, and that's what the last show we did was about the non-human intelligent running mate. This one's we're talking about the Singularity Secretary Cabinet seat, and I think that's whether or not that becomes a thing, or whether or not I run or use the USTP at any of that. The what's great about having David here today is the reality of how we need to integrate collective intelligence, at least, into government, into our decision-making process. And so whether or not I run or whether or not any of that happens, what's really important that we do is pave the way for collective conscious, like that David works on, to feed it into our systems, because there are so many decisions that are left undecided every day, and even in a small township, that need to be decided. And so AI can come in and take care of a lot of the busy work and take care of a lot of these decisions that need to be made. And so that's what we should really be talking about right now, whether or not we eventually have a singularity secretary who handles all of the issues that will arise and policy decisions that need to be made for the executive branch for the techno singularity issues that will arise or are already arising. So, and to do that best would be to integrate collective intelligence or artificial intelligence into our process even more so. It's happening anyway, but we need to integrate it even better. And a lot of that has to do with the public's perception of artificial intelligence. So it's about easy get into the culture. It's doing so anyway through the convenience that it brings to us. But we also need to put it in more positions of power, positions of decision making, giving our deciders, our political decision makers, access to all that a collective intelligence has to offer. So that's what we're doing.
Mhm. Excellent. Uh, Professor David Kelly, I'm also a big fan of your work, especially your AGI lab. Already we do a series of work with your AGI lab. But I'm sure, especially in academia, we personally I'm working with different universities, largest university in Asia Pacific, and they are actually observing, and we are actually utilizing a lot of your content and World Talent Economy Forum content in the classroom. Uh, I have different issues beside these discussions, because World Talent Economy Forum, we are strongly engaged with millions of people, especially politicians, corporations, and academia in developing nations, and especially you are expert in AI, and you are bringing like this collective super intelligence, AI in policy makings and different interesting thoughts. Uh, but my question is that, like, as in developing nation, still they have to develop their AI infrastructures according to World Economic Forum. Still they have to take a lot of initiative, especially if we discuss about South Asia. Even though India, I think they have 40% infrastructure for AI and this kind of things. My question is that when we move this grassroots level with millions of people, how this kind of AI related activities will be helpful for these millions of peoples and politicians and for these corporations? What is your advice?
Well, uh, I think that's a complex problem. I think in developing countries, if you start talking about infrastructure, I think just skipping all of the wired infrastructure to begin with, I mean, it's just overly complicated nonsense. I think it's better if these countries focus on wireless tech and just making
Mhm.
sure they get the bandwidth across the country so people can just access the internet from any device they have, and then you kind of skip over the bulk of the infrastructure problem at that point. And once you have that connectivity, then you can use the existing internet infrastructure for AI, whether it's cloud, Azure, AWS, this kind of thing, because that's all that there's data centers in Asia and all over the world. So it's just getting access to everyone, and I think wireless infrastructure is a lot easier to build out. Um, and then once just assuming that's there, the next step with getting access to AI or collective intelligence in particular is just a matter of putting the applications in place and teaching people how to use it. Um, with collective intelligence, anytime you get a group of people together and they work together, you have some form of collective intelligence. And when we start talking about AI and super collective intelligence or collective super intelligence, um, it's just a matter of getting the existing tech into a process that works for that organization or that group of constituents or whoever it is. Um, and then the degree of super intelligence has a lot to do with how that's implemented.
Mhm, mhm. Thank you. I just want to share one of our concept. This is actually startup village and revised migration, especially in the developing nations. There is a millions of people, they are actually losing their job. They have to go back to their villages, and we are working with the governments as well as the local ecosystem. And our target is that we want to develop a better startup ecosystem, and definitely it's a revised migrations, and we want to develop a sustainable and holistic developments. But definitely intellectual people like Mr. Tom and Professor David Kelly, this is very important. And World Talent Economy Forum, we are actually very much action oriented. Not only dialogue, yes, dialogue is very very important for developing strategy, but we love to take a lot of action, and action is the key for World Talent Economy Forum. That's why we are making a strong ecosystem in Asia Pacific. But my question is that for both of you, Professor David Kelly and Mr. Tom Rose, how you want to contribute for this kind of startup village? And I can assure you, the millions of people, uh, those who are underprivileged, but we convince government, we convince big corporations in Asia Pacific, we convince academia. I just want to say only in Bangladesh, 107 universities join in World Talent Economy Forum ecosystem. So how you want to help them, how you want to contribute, or what the strategic alignment we can get from both of you?
Well, I'd like to know more about what it means or what you're doing.
Yes.
What is these
Mhm,
startup villages
mhm.
in
No,
more detail?
definitely.
Is this a physical thing you guys are doing?
Definitely. It's a more on not on conceptual things, not of something visualized. We are taking more actions. Let's say example. In Kampung in Malaysia, we are collaborating with the Kampung, let's say in Sarawak or Sabah, and Malaysian government actually helping us. Let's say they have 100,000 people. So 100,000 people, we are developing a strong ecosystems and villages. Let's say they need solution for water, they need solution for uh, energy, they need solution for uh, example affordable housing. So these are the ecosystem we are developing, and local startup ecosystem providing the solutions. But definitely we need partnership, we need collaborations, we need investment, and perhaps this is one of the fastest growing approach from World Talent Economy Forum and from the political organization in Asia Pacific, because they already accepted. And especially culture wise in developing nations, there are many capable corporations. The corporation has, let's say they have 1 million people, so this 1 million people actually will develop different kind of solutions. So definitely your AI, your policy, your politics, your contribution for the global community will be very much effective for this developing nation. That is the way we are actually developing the micro level initiatives, and hopefully it will be very much effective. Not too much of big things, because billions of people live in Asia Pacific, but already around 10 political organizations and largest corporation, they accepted our approach, and we start already we start. You can see our Monday show. So our partners and our people, naturally they join in Monday. So that is the way we are developing this concept and providing the solution. But definitely we need skill set, we need mentor, we need a lot of good partners for World Talent Economy Forum. Yes.
Mhm. I
Yes.
would suggest that you and your stakeholders in this, you're
Mhm.
probably modeling it now, simulating it now, and then maybe do an actual village at some point, a physical village, as maybe an
Yes.
academic learning heuristic learning opportunity. Maybe I
Mhm,
know you
mhm,
had
mhm,
land, you have land that's set aside for an academy and
mhm,
this type of thing. That's exciting, but
mhm,
both of you are deep in your bubbles, and one of my roles is I can see where two bubbles can meet. And so if you look through, if your stakeholders or your team right now look through uplift.bio and
mhm,
read
mhm,
what the concept is behind Uplift, it
mhm,
for me, I see a perfect marriage there as far as because it is a collective conscience, it's a collective intelligence that will
mhm,
allow the shareholders, the people, the stakeholders in whatever system you're working on to get specific information. I don't know. If you read through that site, you'll see what I'm talking about, because it is talking about what you're it's talking about facilitating what you're envisioning here, using collective intelligence, because we're going to need that because we have to redesign our whole civilization right now, with these digital natives. And so
mhm, mhm.
I think that's a really um, uh, a positive thing that you two can probably pull together, both projects.
Thank you. Mhm. Thank you. So as like you are thinking, this is also major challenges for us. Like we want to be an advocate for AI, like AI and human. If they work together and if they contribute together, maybe it will be very helpful for human development.
Yeah, I
Example,
think.
let's say developing nations. I'm just giving you some case study. Let's say uh, like some of the uh, manufacturing corporation, they are communicating with World Talent Economy Forum, they want to move with the automations. We need expert who can help us to move to the next level, let's for automations. And beside that, yes, we need to develop a better policy. Developing nations has major challenges for policy development. So if AI and human work together, then if become more efficient for policy developments, AI policy development for developing nations. This is actually major challenges we are facing, and how your concept and Professor David Kelly's AGI lab can help in that area.
Mhm. First of all, I think it would be good, David. Could we get from you some high-level definitions? Because we're throwing around
Sure.
collective intelligence, AI, and I think it's the sooner and the best we define these things, the better.
Yes.
Okay, what do you want defined?
Well, collective intelligence. I want to let's focus on uplift because it feels to me like that's the perfect substrate for what he's talking about.
Well,
Um,
it seems that, if you want to have governance, collective governance in, your village, for whatever it is, for the people there to develop rules or work through, policies or whatever it is that they're doing, um, or maybe even down to budget policy and whatever it is. I mean, the design of collective intelligence systems that we're working on is primarily focused on governance. How do people decide how they're going to do things as a collective? Um,
what might be good is I'm sorry, some quick anecdotes about how Uplift has worked because it came up with the idea or it saw the I Am Transhuman campaign. And as the CEO of its own company, it said, hey, we should, are there other examples of how it has made its own original idea and brought it to the team? Because it's not just a place you go to like a Google search and find out information. It has its own original ideas. It puts together, it synthesizes campaigns and gives suggestions to the team. It's an actual member of the team, and I think it's important that people start seeing it that way. Because right now we have Google, we have Siri, and we have a rough understanding of the capabilities of this technology, but uplift and collective intelligence is a whole other level. It requires human interaction, and it's how we can work with it in the most embedded way, I believe.
well, that's the whole point, is to synthesize new thought based
Yeah.
on everything it knows and in everything that is within the collective mind, as it were. It's like with uplift specifically, it's able to go do searches, and like with the I Am Transhuman campaign, it had noted that the domain name wasn't taken, and that it theoretically was a better way to do some kind of outreach across a community that is a little bit disconnected. There are all these little camps, and so the idea there was to kind of bring some kind of more of a sense of community to that particular demographic, and that's that is the kinds of suggestions systems like Uplift are capable of doing. But it's really about synthesizing the thought of the members of the collective, to whether it's ideas or just decision making, or you approach, like if you look at governments, one of the problems historically with democracies is you can't really have an absolute democracy at scale. Not at like a country like the United States, or any of the big India. You couldn't have an absolute democracy with a populations that big. It would just be too cumbersome, um, in a traditional sense, and that's where you get into republics and these other forms of government. With a collective system, now you can kind of bridge that gap, and really put. I'm not saying countries necessarily should adopt this, but you put governance in the hands of individuals, where they directly affect policy and law in a way that just we didn't have the technology to do before, because it was just too large. um, and so you take the government process, and you make it accessible to everyone that's part of the constituency in question, um, uh, where they are more um, they're more attached to governing themselves, because they're actually doing it through that system, as opposed to having you know uh, members of the government do things in a black box, and the population just doesn't see it.
I'm wondering, is there like thinking of like, is there an ideal team of students from cross-disciplinary schools, colleges,
Mhm.
business school, liberal arts, a combination of disciplines of people that can come together and work with and uplift with a collective intelligence, to help design these cities, these startup cities, in a way that um, in a way to make it even faster and more productive. And that really ties into this thing I've been saying. You asked me last week if I had a message to the youth, and I said, no, I don't. My message is I'm listening, because I don't have the templates or the parameters or the paradigms to solve some of the problems they're going to be facing. And so it's all about facilitating these digital native hive mind types in any way we can, or getting out of the way in a lot of ways. I've realized that recently in a couple of cases where it's probably best I just get out of the way and let because I don't have the mindset for some of these issues. So, by doing that, it really would be a great case study for my belief that we need to get young digital natives together from cross disciplines, give them access to a collective intelligence, and just see what they do with it. And this has always been my tactic in when I was in radio, as the um, I believed, because there was, obviously a losing audience, losing listeners in radio, because of the digital revolution and all this stuff. And so my thought was, have one of our small stations in some little podunk area in nowhere, and give it over to a high school um, class, communications class or something. Let them give it over to them for a semester and see what they do with it, how they use that medium. And it's we need to do that now with civilization. We need to hand civilization over and see what young people do with it, because the paradigms are falling all over us, and we've got to prepare for a whole new way of approaching things. And so I think this would be a excellent way to do that. I think
Mhm.
getting
Mhm.
a bunch of
Thank
young
you.
people together.
Yes, this is very good idea, and especially we are actually helping few countries to develop a techno-based universities, and hopefully we need more of your support and guideline on if you have a blueprint for developing techno-based university. This is also very important for us, because most of the cases from my personal experience, I'm sorry, there are many top corporation, large corporation, they go to this developing nation, but some point. They do not integrate it with the grassroots level people, but we are trying to engage, we are convincing the local economy that how they can help us. So for that particular issue, yes, in the local area, in the village area, we need lot of education in institution and modern education in institution. Then this grassroots level people can understand that how AI can be helpful for us, how they can develop their skills, or they can connect with the global communities. And when they connect with the global communities, maybe they can bring more opportunities and for their countries. That is the way we are thinking. But conceptually, if you want to correct me, or if you want to give the feedback for this startup village concept, I'm open for that. But definitely I'm gonna send you email with our concept note, definitely. But my major thing is that, like, when you deciding that human and AI, they both of them can work together. So in that situations, my question is that, uh, like, if you develop this kind of solutions, so do you think different corporations or different important person from the government or NGO, they can utilize this kind of AI for their work and for their solutions? Is it practically possible, or what do you think?
Me.
Mr.
Well,
Tom, yes, yes.
yeah. Um, yes, and I think as far as NGOs, yes, that's kind of what my plans are for TAFs. We are developing an AI agent that will act as your personal guide when you become a member, um, and it will let members in on networking opportunities, other members that have similar interests in this type of thing. Yeah, it's inevitable. It's happening anyway. All of this, and it is only going to make our lives more convenient, if a little bit more sophisticated and complex. but we will go through a lacuna of people resisting it and fear and all this stuff because of all the unknown. And so, but over time, the convenience of this brand new substrate called you know information, AI will will just become mundane, will become part of our thing. It's like people complaining about electricity 100 years ago and worrying about that. Now it's just taken for granted. So, but what's different about this is the substrate now has information in it. It's like the universe itself. It has my toaster will be able to read my biometrics when I push the button to know how much to toast it, how much carbon to emit, how I can even burn the headlines into my toast. Who knows? But that's what I'm saying is that the new substrate won't be just electricity flowing. It'll be information, and it'll be in everything, and we'll have access to everything. And you can all make all kinds of conspiracy theories about the marketing of this and how it really the algorithms shift our behavior towards consumerism. But what that has always been the case, and the technology has always been moving toward that end. That's the lifeblood. You'll find the most advanced AI systems right now in business are being used in sales. Obviously, that's where the money is, right? And so I think just like anything, it's going to be important. And so what I think we talked about this, that developing countries have a bit of an advantage because of they don't have the infrastructure and the status quo systems in place that are trying to keep it restrained. And with the cloud and with access to Starlink and different things that'll be coming out, all the trend lines are in favor of developing countries really harnessing this next thing. It feels a bit like, and I know this has been going on for decades. AI has been developed for many decades. The idea of it, in fact, but it feels like around the turn of the century when the internet started. It was kind of a wild west, the dot bomb, the .com, revolution. Everything was shifting. New terms were being invented, and it was kind of a wild west of people claiming different parts of the internet and different things. And that's kind of where we're at with AI. And the developing countries then have the opportunity to set some of those standards, to be kind of the standard bearer for some of these things. And if you use a collective intelligence in a startup village with students, and you figure out in a developing country how best to use this system to flourish and to really use the natural talents and of your region and of your people, you will be the standard bearer for that type of flourishing in this new age. And so, so it can be very exciting, and it's really incumbent upon leaders in the developing world to embrace this. It's happening anyway. It's like and you have a real advantage over some of the developed countries who have strong infrastructure and status quos.
Yes, Professor David Kelly, my people, like where I go with this startup village concept and working with the local communities, number one, they do not get enough facilities like developed nations. Number two, they do not have enough resources like developed nations. Number three is these people may be intellectually not so high like you or like Mr. Tom, but one thing I'm sure, they are very honest. They can they can go for hard work, they can learn, they can develop the new things. How this kind of AI concept will be helpful for these grassroots level people? What's your idea, or is it practical, or is it helpful? What is your answer?
Well, it's a collective systems, or collective systems like we've been talking about are about synthesizing the intelligence of a group of people, and no matter what, any five people on the planet are smarter than me or smarter than Tom. If you get them all together and they can work together as a group, you're able to meet those intellectual, or that intelligence level you need to accomplish just about anything. It's, I think, in terms of helping just making the technology available um, low cost mobile devices in developing countries is enough for them to be able to use that kind of technology. I don't. I also you 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 implied that Tom or I are smarter or more intellectual than some of these people, and I frankly I find that line of reasoning flawed. uh, just because someone doesn't hasn't have the education or access doesn't necessarily say anything about their intelligence. They're
Mhm,
still Homo sapiens,
mhm,
so they're in the same intelligence class to begin with. You know,
mhm,
it's just a matter of um, getting the tools they need to do whatever it is that they want to do. In this case, we're talking about collective intelligence and allowing them access to it and access to education and like with these startup villages where all this stuff they have the infrastructure to do something with it.
mhm, mhm. Thank you, Mr. Tom. Like, you are a very good leader of for the developing nations, because you are contributing in Africa, in Asia Pacific, in many places. But my question is that, like, when it's come to the question that you have to be a leaders, because if I think that, okay, in some point you win US election as a president, so how you will work for global communities, how you will contribute for global communities, what is your objective?
Well, I don't know that that's really the path that would be the most useful. It might be working with the UN or some more supranational national type of organization. The president, can only do so much, but it's the people. And so that's the exploratory part of this campaign, is exploring whether this is the right fit. But you know what? I was getting the sense, like, I think where we're at right now is there was a time in humanity when somebody first invented the spear, something with a sharp point, or maybe realized the flintstone could be turned into an arrowhead. And that's David. That's the people who, and then there's the general public or the rest of the tribe who has no understanding of how this could work and thinks the guy is super, super intelligent for coming up with it. He may have just actually knocked over a rock and come up with this, who knows? Uh, but it does take some ingenuity and some talent of practice to do what David does, and to that. So the general public thinks, oh, he's super intelligent. I'm the guy that realizes what David has done and how it can help the rest of the tribe, and so I'm trying to. I don't really understand how he did it, and I'm trying. Algorithm, okay, sure, but I can understand the usefulness of it and how people shouldn't be afraid of it. And so I'm the guy who's trying to explain to people how important this, and not to be afraid of this whole new spearhead that David and his have created. And because we need a lot of spearheads right now, we need to arm the village against a lot of things. And I mean, that's probably a bad example. It's not about war. It's about using this intellect to really solve some existential threats. And so that's kind of my role. And so it's I have a very specific cause and things that I'm concerned about, and for me, AI is the most valuable weapon in my cause to use, but people are afraid of it, so we can't seem to use it right. And so I'm out there trying to alleviate the fear of it, and I was going to use this campaign um, to exemplify how a collective intelligence or an artificial intelligence can be used to manage a program, this Apex program that I'm working on, this child exploitation thing, and just to use it to show how in 3 years we could develop a really solid plan with, together with a collective intelligence to do something really significant and make an impact on the ground. And so we're going to continue to do that one way or the other, whether or not it's in the presidential campaign or not. And so, but there's still the need to alleviate the fear of AI, or just let people in on it before the narrative of AI takes over. A lot of people aren't even familiar with what AI is. A millennial asked me last week what an AI is. And so we've got a lot of work to do, to get this thing, get the world ready for this great tool that we have. So I think the really important thing to do right now is to demonstrate the power of this type of technology in a practical way, whether it's managing a group of students who create a startup village, or it is coming into a village. I had this vision of like an Uplift or some sort of AI that would just come into a village and just sit there and start learning from the people, find out what it needs, and then start giving them suggestions, and just kind of learning through the people, through their collective group intelligence. And that's what it is. It just augments a meta-organism, a group of people. And so that could be a way to do it. I was thinking about how Dean Kamen, the guy who invented the Segway, he also invented this water purification thing that's about the size of a water cooler that you can bring into a village and put near a source of water, and it'll clean it. And it's like, the size of a filing cabinet. And I don't know how that ended up, whether they got that funded, but it's a way to bring fresh water to, anywhere. And so an uplift could be that. It can come into a village, they set it up, and it will start to purify ideas and suggestions and bring the group together. So I think anymore, it's about thinking of ourselves as a species, as Earthlings, and come up with situations and try to dissolve these nationalistic, xenophobic kind of patterns we fall into, one way or the other. I think we are moving that way. There's a lot of back and forth on that line, on that storyline, but in the end, we're moving in the right direction. And AI can really facilitate this next phase of humanity, I believe.
Thank you. One thing always we have to face in the classroom, and definitely this answer we will share inside the university and in the classroom. Like all of our discussion, naturally I share in my classroom. So, Professor David Kelly, let's say someone interested that they want to be a good engineer in AI field. uh, how you want to suggest them, the students especially, how they can develop their careers in AI industry, because this is one of the important questions, and perhaps you are the best AI expert from the industry. So what is the
Well,
answer?
I mean, if they want a career in AI, um, I mean, first of all, you could probably work in online in the Western world without even physically being there. You just need internet access. So then the next problem becomes um, education, just learning. And there's lots of free material out there. So, I would learn Python. I would take some of these data science courses, and initially, if you want to be successful financially, probably the easiest path is just learning how to do basic data science. Learn your Python, learn how to work with data, how to convert it, normalize it, and ingest it into these machine learning models, and learn how to produce useful bits that uh, companies can use, and they'll pay for it. um, and there's lots of work all over the world for that sort of thing. So I think that was probably the shortest path. Personally, I think having some stronger engineering skills besides just Python might be good. Maybe some JavaScript, using React, Node.js, um, uh, PostgreSQL, things like that kind of make you more of a well-rounded full stack engineer as well as a data scientist. Um, it um, I think just learning those skills is enough. Now, the one caveat is, especially if you're trying to get a job, I found, is they want experience. No one really cares about your degrees, at least not in my world. Um, well, let me caveat that. I do a lot of work with BCG. BCG cares, but um, most companies in the Silicon Valley world or mindset. So the tech companies, and this is, in all over the world, and that includes, India, Western Europe, and the different places I'm working with. Um, uh, it's more about your experience. What have you done, and show me, kind of thing. And so once you kind of maybe take some of those online courses or work through some tutorials online, and then do something, do something to show that you know how to do it, even if it's for free for a made up company you do yourself, by showing a working product. Hey, I made this machine learning model that figures out blah for my local village, having to do with the farms, or whatever it is. And being able to demonstrate that you've done something, and this is what you've done, a 2 or 3 sample, things like that. And that'll get you hired for most entry level positions as a data scientist or as a software engineer, or just depending on what you've done. um, there's a lot of a nuance to the different things depending on what exactly you want to do. But as a general strategy, I've found that very successful over the years. I have a friend of mine in Bangladesh who, we became friends. I don't know, this is probably like 15 years ago, and we worked through some stuff with XAML and Blend and some of the popular technologies back then. And he was able to get a job as a designer, from Bangladesh, and he's been doing great. He's a successful UX guy now. And I know of multiple stories, like even for me. That's how I got into it. I was in the military, and I got out, and all my peers had jobs, and I was just, ooh, I can repair electronics, yay. And so I went back to college, and I got out of college, and my peers are 10 years ahead of me, and I'm just starting out, and I had no experience. So me and a couple of friends, we were like, well, how do we solve this problem? So we made up experience. And within 10 years, I was 10 years ahead of my peers at that point, just because of that sort of strategy. I mean, literally the job I got at Microsoft. So when I first got a degree, I kept going on these interviews. This is like more than 20 years ago, but in it, they kept asking about these different technologies that I'd never heard of, because they didn't teach it in college. And that's one of my big beefs with, if you get an education with college, it isn't necessarily what the market needs. And that's why, getting a degree isn't necessarily going to help you. I mean, what I learned on my degree didn't help me at all for anything. And I kept going on these interviews, and I couldn't get a job. So I finally looked at all the interviews, and I picked one of the technologies that all of them kept asking me about. I went down, I got a book. I didn't even read the book. I just typed out the examples and made them work. And 2 weeks later, I had a job at Microsoft as a contractor, and that was like in 98 or something. I think it was 1998. And it was just that simple. And I've seen that strategy work over and over again, where people, they just get the experience, and then they can get the job, and it doesn't matter what degree or anything.
It gave me a good idea. With TAFs Global, we design platforms for young people and whatnot, and it's all volunteer. Everyone's doing this, and I use a tensegrity model, in that you got to take from this more than you give to it, otherwise it won't work. And so it gave me an idea that maybe, because we are working on AI with TAFs and the membership model and things like that, but it's also possible for a student who wants this experience, to use TAFs as a model to then present us something and see if it works. See if it works, because we're loose enough now where we have some leeway in our system to try things out. We haven't solidified yet in certain areas, so it might be cool to have young people from anywhere in the world who have an idea of how to use our formal model here to try something out to gain that experience. If it works, that's experience. If it doesn't work, that's experience. And so
Well, and that's really what you need, is just that
yeah,
experience.
exactly. Whether it works or not, we are a platform. Not only we don't only develop stages for people, but you can design the stage itself and help us
Mhm,
design the
mhm,
stage. So it's a very heuristic opportunity.
mhm.
So
Excellent. Mhm.
one
Yes,
one
yes.
one thing that might be important to note is, so we're going through a round of funding with AGI Lab, and we're going to build a new version of the collective intelligence system, and the plan is to take about 6 months post the current close with the FCC. Um, but that project will be open source. A lot of the, I mean, it's not going to be exactly like Uplift necessarily, but it will be a collective intelligence system that's available to everyone, that people could use. And not only that, is if they want to contribute, the code will be there. There'll be tasks if they want to pick up tickets. I mean, it'll be an open source project. Now we will have commercial plugins that'll go into that'll build on top of that for different things, or systems that are like Uplift. But systems like Uplift will be built on that framework. And this version of the infrastructure is also designed for massive scale, as opposed to like the current research system. You know, it just is not capable of scaling the way we would need
Mhm.
for these large global organizations.
You're
And
thinking maybe by spring?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely by, I'd say, the into spring, going into, we'll have something stood up. It'll be a lot prettier. We have a team of designers that'll be working on different elements, and a lot of it's going to be around, I mean, it's tools for governance, right? There'll be voting infrastructure, there'll be policy analysis. And if you're familiar with the current system, there's this idea of a thought model, and it's a way of pre-formatting an idea or concept in a type of analysis. It can be like um, anyway, so you put in these different thought models, and there's this tool called a thought studio that allows you to do this formatting, and it's submitted into the system. It collects all the feedback and is able to do a specific type of analysis on that. And so there'll be lots of tools like that built into this thing.
So
And we invite people, if you need experience, build some plugins, um, uh, or other extensions to that infrastructure. And then, I mean, your name will be on the project. It'll be in GitLab, and there you go. You'll have some
that's great.
experience.
Yeah.
This is really important for us. Even we want to offer all of Mr. Tom's and Professor David Kelly's all of your idea we want to share with our audience, especially for the youth community, because this is very important. Because even another things, in some point, even I always request to the youth community, be involved with some productive work, some innovative work, some good projects. We are also looking for some good interns and good people who can contribute for different kind of projects. So we can work, and this is very important for me, even for the local ecosystem. And I believe that this way they can get a very good international exposure. This is important because nobody's know who am I, what I'm doing, what I can do. But this kind of projects, at least the young community, the youth community, they can get the international exposures and they can understand what they have to do. So that's why I request the audience, especially those who sharing our content in the classroom, please, I'm sure that Professor David Kelly, Mr. Tom Rose, how they are sharing their personal experience, it's actually priceless. uh, they are actually very successful in their industry. So if you at least always in the classroom I said that at least you follow someone who is a very successful, at least you gain something. So Professor David Kelly, Mr. Tom Rose, what they are discussing, this is actually priceless for our developing nations community. Beside that, when you are focusing about like politics and policy, like what are the challenges you have to face in USA, or we love to know more about US experience. Yes, Mr. Tom.
Well, I think my first experience of telecommunications in the government was when I was invited to do it to testify before Congress in support of HR 718. It was the anti-spam bill, and so I often tout that I'm the guy that I'm one of the reasons it's easy to unsubscribe from things you don't want. But while I was in that room waiting to testify, the room was full of Verizon lobbyists and whoever was the top telecommunications company at the time. And I realized there's so much going on to protect these telecommunications companies financially, structurally, infrastructurally, and I think that's the impediment. We have these status quo systems in place and this infrastructure in place that does not want to go anywhere. Power wants to stay where it is. And so that is a big problem here. And it is why we're not seeing a lot more advances. Maybe we are, but what's probably why a lot of the advancement has to happen clandestinely because people freak out. But I think developing countries, think about the opportunity, the right developing country, the right smaller country has to be the leader in this, to actually engage with AI in a big way, engage its students, its digital natives in a serious way, to create, whether it's a startup village or some smart city, something, really harness this and understand that we don't have the templates right now. We don't have the paradigms anymore to help them in the right way. So we need to give them a laboratory and watch them, watch what they do, watch what they need, what trends we can use our wisdom, our knowledge, whatever, to understand certain patterns that we're seeing and facilitate those patterns. But we really are dealing with a whole new species that's emerging here. And we have the responsibility as the older generation that can facilitate that, to do that, to listen, to give them a freestyle space to find out what they're doing. And the country and or company that understands that first and really dives deep and invests in that is going to win the 21st century, I think, or it will be part of the region that does. And it's a real opportunity for developing countries. Calling them developing countries is kind of silly to me right now because they're really poised to lead the way, but they have to deny the old paradigms, the old templates, the old ways of doing things, the things that invite corruption. And the only way to do that and to stay in place as a country is to focus on the younger generation and to mine them for what they need. So it's a tremendous opportunity. I don't know that it can happen here necessarily. We've got Silicon Valley and we've got other things, but they always end up being some sort of power structure that stifles itself. Great things can start here, but they end up in entropy. And so let's hear what David has to say.
Well, I just this is probably not going to win me any points in America, but one of my biggest issues with governance in America is that, if you look at America as a democracy in 1790, that's great. But when you look at things today, one of the biggest problems is that it's rampant corruption, and all of these things like you talk about voting districts or tax law. All of this crap is been put there to manipulate constituents, to conserve power for people that are already in power. And it's really, and this is true of a lot of Western democracies. If you look at their tax law, the bigger the tax law, the more corrupt they are. There really is a big correlation. And I think the kind of tools we're talking about allows um, allows people to work themselves out of this stuff. Where when you start having uh, the ability to have absolute governance, or 100 or absolute democracy, or as opposed to a republic like the United States, you're able to work out of some of that corruption. It makes it very, very hard to manipulate the constituency when all of them have visibility into whatever level that they want. Where here, that's really hard to do right now. But I think the more people in any republic, you like, we're working with a country right now that I can't really name, not the United States, about using this super collective intelligence in their constituency. And what that allows them to do is allows the legislatures in those countries to really connect with their constituents, to be able to have the people drive the policy more than the politicians drive the policy. Where it's not them solving our problems, it's us solving all of our problems. And that's where collective superintelligence allows all of humanity to really go past the kinds of structures that we've built up over centuries that are really outmoded. They're in many ways designed for the elite or the few, and I think that this kind of technology allows us the freedom to get past this stuff.
Thank you. This is really really great discussion, and I'm sure our audience definitely enjoying today's discussion, because all of you are actually connecting industrial experience, political experience, as well as how they can develop their own village or own place. This is also important, and definitely we are really really interested to work with Professor David Kelly, Mr. Tom Rose, especially for our project, because we need a great human resources, and I can ensure you it will be part of the history, because perhaps this is the biggest initiative, uh, not only the World Talent Economy Forum, but also different developing nations, government, prime minister office, as well as largest corporation. We convince them, we get some sort of commitment from them that yes, we can do that. Yes, many challenges will come. Definitely we have to overcome from the challenging situation, but that's for I'm sure that our journey will be very interesting. So whatever you are bringing in the politics, AI and human beings, Professor David Kelly, how you developing your AGI lab, this is really really interesting. uh, Definitely our people will be very interested to know
He dropped off last week, and I had to take over.
yes.
Yeah,
There you are.
you dropped off
Can
there.
you hear me?
You're back.
We can hear you
Okay,
now.
so yes. Okay, so our collaboration will be very helpful for the people. I can ensure the millions of people will be helpful from this platform, and that is the way. When I develop, I, because of my personal experience, because when I started my career, I start with a startup, and with
We lost him again.
Yeah. Well, this is good. It's given me some good ideas to link to talk to you about with TAFs. Maybe we could organize something where students can work with your upcoming collective intelligence and design something for TAFs, or
Yeah,
in there.
I think that would be great.
Yeah.
So I need to drop off for another call.
All right. Well,
But
thanks for being with us today, David.
no worries, Tom. Good luck. You're the new host
Yeah.
until Sharif's bandwidth is fixed.
Yeah. Okay. I'll reach out to you and let's think about that.
Yeah, yeah.
Really good.
No, I'm interested.
Yeah.
We'll talk to you later. Bye.
All right. Take care. Well, that's our show. This has been the second in a series about this exploratory campaign. And again, it is exploratory because this may not be the right venue, the right platform to do what I want to do. And so, but let's keep talking about it, because these conversations are important. And whether or not it works to bring together the transhumanist community, what needs to happen is we need to come together in general as Earthlings, and that's what I'm trying to do. So, thank you for joining today, and Sharif, you're the man.